Welcome to the draft, Rui. We got week 3 M15 booster selection. Figured week 1 er, ran us, pretty mediocre. Let's try to run it back, trying to hit that triplicate spirits, but we miss, obviously. Um, we do hit some interesting cards, though. Particularly, I like Unmake the Graves and Undergrowth Scavenger. Makes me interested in looking into some sort of green black self mill deck. We also hit, I don't know how we keep doing this, but we hit double of a card, double Arnott Tinkerer, which is pretty good with artifacts. So now we have 2 Bronze Sable and 2 Willforged Golem to enable them. So a 2/3 flyer for 3 is pretty good. One thing I hate is that when you barely click on it, it runs away and it doesn't even go to the sideboard. It just runs away. Coral Bear is kind of mediocre. Invisibility is not even worth going to find the card to get. Hydra Surge, I've boarded it in before in some practice matches against some combat-oriented decks. And Pillar of Light is really good. It's just, basically unmake 3 mana, kill the most relevant creature that they usually have. And Generator Servant the ability is never relevant. So it's just 2 mana 2/1, and we already have 2 mana 2/1 trample in red. So the new packs are definitely good in this blue artifact realm, potentially comboing with our Scrapyard Mongols, and potentially in this green black realm, and potentially in our black white deck or whatever, just to add the Pillar of Light, and the Unmake the Graves could potentially remove March from Returned. So in looking at the decks this week, let's just look through some potential builds that we have. Alright, so this deck utilizes our artifacts to the maximum. So we get to play both of the Willforged Golems, both of our Bronze Sables. That enables our double Arnott Tinkerer and our double Scrapyard Mongrel 5/3 trample for 4. Pretty solid. It only has 3 pieces of interaction in Bring Low, Rage of Purphoros, and Seismic Strike, which is a little low on the count of things that can interact with creatures. But we do have a decent amount of evasion and a bunch of guys that hit hard and have trample. Nimistad is really sick to put on any of these 4-drops. We get a Scaldkin for another little piece of evasion and interaction, shock-like removal if we really need it. So a little bit of evasion, smooth curve, peel from realities in the sideboard. There's no real value to pick up peel from, but I'm sure peel and Coral Barrier and whatever could come in for this deck. This deck seems solid, but for week 4, it doesn't seem busted. So some other decks to look at. We got blue-white. Again, our white is probably our best color. The double triplicate spirits and the inspired charge, sanctified charge just really do work. So the blue shell gives us a bunch of flyers. The Tinkerers will likely have flying. We need Bronze Sables more than the Willforged Golem because our curve is already so good at the top end. Willforged Golem is likely to just get stuck in hand a lot of the games. And to enable the triplicate spirits as early as possible, things like Summit or Hopeful Eidolon are pretty good, just so we can curve out. The only problem with this deck, I just can't believe that in our blue, the only card draw we have is Research Assistant. It's just very slow. Pretty mediocre. We have to play like this Battle Priest. It's just what our curve needs. There's so many 3-drops. We don't want a Coral Barrier. This is more like 5. But really, this deck just has so much evasion. Hopefully, it can block the ground with some 1/3s or gain some life and trade off maybe in the early game. But then it just plays a bunch of flyers, triplicate spirits, and then these overruns really descend the game immediately. Again, Peel from Reality, not the best here. But I could see bringing it in against certain things. can at least trigger heroic, like block with this guy, bounce him, gain 2 life, bounce a relevant creature, set him back on tempo, and do whatever. I guess we can heroic up this guy and gain some incidental life as well to help with the race. But overall, we have a dual land and an Evolving Wilds. Mana's pretty good, but this deck, again, not what I chose to play. So let's keep looking up the list of week 4 decks. This deck's really interesting. I think it's actually probably one of the worst of our potential builds. It's green-white splashing black. Got an Evolving Wilds and 2 swamps, basically just for these 2, March of the Return and Make the Graves. And we get to play self-mill pretty hard with Commune with the Gods and Scout the Borders. And other than that, like Sedge Scorpions are trading off. Got some ramp guys. Undergrowth Scavenger hopefully can be, a 15/15 at the best. Every creature in our graveyard, none in play. But this deck is good because it plays the white removal, which is more cost effective than the black, and better on our mana if we're going to run this. We get to play Scholar of Atheros. On second thought, we probably want at least a 3rd black source to activate this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's make that change right now. Definitely want 3 black. Even though the Evolving Wilds counts, we want 3 in play with this. And we got plenty of white sources here because we only need a single white and we're great. And we do have this Abzan Guide that we want to flip. So we got a lot of life like Scholar, Abzan Guide, Hopeful Eidolon, and some big creatures. We had a couple 3/3s. This thing can make anything big. And since we don't have the Triplicate Spirits in this version, because it's a spell, not a creature, we're not really running the Sanctified Charge. We're just running like these Deuter Convoke guys, and just hopefully making some big lifelink creatures. Just comboing a little bit with this Undergrowth Scavenger. This deck looks sweet. Some big dudes, but it seems like easy to answer. Like single bounce spells and single removal spells are really good against it. And the mana's awful. It's the least consistent mana base that we have. So while this deck could be powerful, I don't like it. Okay, so here's a sweet looking deck. Black-blue, we get to play Double Bronze Sable and Wolfforged Golem to go with our Arnaut Tinkerers. The evasion's pretty good. We still get to play a bunch of our black creatures. We still have 4 black permanents in addition to our gray merchants, which is not that great. But we do get the double peel, which is sick with gray merchant. We have a bunch of flyers, a bunch of removal. Freaka's Cure, Lash of the Whip, Come of No Blood, and the peels. So we get to interact, we get to fly over them. And Sign of Blood is really great. It's the only divination effect we have in our whole pool. And the research assistants are great too. So this deck is likely to see the most amount of cards, and that makes the games very consistent. The mana's pretty good. A little black heavy, but I like this deck a fair amount. But ultimately, for week 4, I chose to go with trusty old Orzhov. Mainly because I think this deck is just the most broken in our entire pool. So we don't have a single white 2-drop that we want in this deck because we're trying to get full value out of this gray merchant. So we're running all of these 2. I also like 2 power creatures in this deck because of Inspired Charge and Sanctified Charge. Every 2 power creature just deals more damage, more likely. Child Knight, even Fleshmad Steed, he's fine. Walking Corpse, a little bit better. Sign of Blood, Freaka's Cure, the same. We get these Laguna Band guys, they're good. They can trade up versus 3/3s and 4/3s. Still get the 2/3s, but they're black, so it's fine. Scholar of Atheros is great. Really forces them to have removal. In a lot of the games I'll try to play will, kind of force their hand, try to get them to use their removal on other things, and then when my hand is empty and I actually have time to use the activated ability, since I, will start flooding out or whatnot. This will hopefully ride it to victory. Servant All-Stage solid, the Merchant solid, Lash, Verdict, Pillar, Triplicate Spirits, MVP, Covenant Blood, pretty good. So ultimately decided to choose this deck. This deck really only gained one Pillar of Light. I still think it's better than all the other decks. The blue-black deck is close, I think, in power level. But this deck utilizes, the Gray Merchant's a little bit better, even though it has some more hard removal rather than bounce spells, and I think Scholar is really good for sealed as well. So this is our current build, and again, I go through all of the other sealed builds because it's relevant to think about, like, when will this deck be good? When will this deck be good? Like, if they can't block a flyer, or if you feel like experimenting because you're playing against an easy matchup, or if you feel like crushing, or if you just think they're going to sideboard, to defeat whatever you show game one. Well, let's say the Peel from Realities are really good because they're playing, they drafted all Theros block for their, picks, and they have all these heroic guys, and maybe Peel from Reality is going to be really good against them, so you want to play either blue-red or blue-black, or, probably blue-black because you get doubles Freaka's Cure, and we still have one Freaka's Cure in the sideboard. This is not always good, but yeah. So stay tuned for our Week 4 matchup coming up.